welcome back. It is Sunday night, April 12th, as of recording this for tomorrow, Motown Monday, April 13th. The Pistons have clinched the 1 seed and a 60-win season headed into the playoffs. Our playoff bracket is set. We'll take a look at what's to come for the Pistons over the next few weeks. The Red Wings officially eliminated from playoff contention, one of the all-time collapses when it comes to a regular season top team trying to make the postseason. The Tigers have gotten back on track after a rocky start to the week. And the Lions, about a week and a half away from the NFL draft, getting closer and closer to the best time to make changes to your team and your roster for what's to come in the upcoming season. So that's our lineup for today, Motown Monday, April 13th. I'm Griff Snyder. Going to start off with the NBA portion of the show today. The Detroit Pistons, who won their 60th game of the season today against the Pacers, and they are the number 1 seed in the NBA playoffs. Super exciting stuff. I think you got to start by acknowledging that the 60 wins was awesome to see from a team that 2 seasons ago won just 14 games. The development of the young guys, the change in coaching from Monty Williams to JB Bickerstaff, it's been so much fun to watch this Pistons team grow. And after the tough 6-game series loss to the New York Knicks last year, I didn't know it was going to rebound and be this much better this year. Now, it does all come down to the playoffs. Whether or not the Pistons are slated to be the number 1 team in the East with a postseason to play is another question. But they are the number 1 seed, and I think you have to take a moment to appreciate the change that has happened in the organization. I think you have to take a moment to appreciate the players. Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, just to name a few. We'll go over some numbers for those guys. But I think it was just an awesome run. So cool to see this team just fight through the ups and downs, injuries to guys like Cade Cunningham, slow start for Asar Thompson. If you don't remember, that dude was fighting blood clots not too long ago. And now he's going to be an all-defensive first-team player. There's just a lot of really awesome things that have happened with this Pistons team. And I'm super excited for the playoffs. Had my heart ripped out a season ago when they lost that series to the Knicks. But it was a blast. I do want to start or go to a little bit of a negative thing here. The fact that Cade Cunningham is ineligible for postseason awards is not right. I was someone who appreciated the NBA's efforts at making it matter to play in those regular season games so that guys couldn't just load manage their way and not go out and perform it. I don't think it's a good thing to manufacture it artificially the way it was done. But I did appreciate the effort that went towards getting guys to play games. I think the real answer to that question is in the NBA playoff format or the regular season format. But I think, especially with the way this season is gone and a lot of people arguing against it, I think it is very clear that the minimum number of games played was a clear miss by the NBA. And the number 1 guy who's going to pay for it is Cade Cunningham. Now, it doesn't hurt as bad as it would have if he was in that MVP conversation. The number's obviously not quite there to match the likes of Nikola Jokic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who are just 2 all-time offensive talents with great surrounding casts. But it still does hurt when you watch a guy develop, when you watch him battle through injuries in previous seasons, you watch him stick it out with the franchise and keep a good attitude about it, growing with a young core of guys like Cade Cunningham has, and him not get paid off with the clearly deserving All-NBA first team that he was on track for. He's going to end up finishing just a game short due to that collapsed lung that kept him out for a few weeks. And he just had one heck of a season. So if the NBA is not going to acknowledge it, we sure can here. It was a very similar season for him to last year, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think we saw his defense take a leap. And I think we saw the usage of the supporting cast take a leap, which was really awesome to see. 24 points, 5.5 boards, almost a full 10 assists, a steal and a half, and almost one full block per game. Dropped the turnovers by 0.7 per game. Just an overall great season from Cade, who would have been a clear top All-NBA first-team player, which then leads to the top 5 in the MVP voting. And I think talked about it last week. The MVP, the idea of that award would even move him higher on that All-NBA list just because of how much he means to the Pistons team. But I think the real improvements this season, moving on from just the fact that Cade deserved All-NBA first team, it happened in the rest of the squad. And it was very clear with Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson. Those two developing not only showed their skill sets and how good this team can be, but it also allowed for certain players to slide into role positions. Guys like Isaiah Stewart, Tobias Harris, Ron Holland, they were able to sit into a role that made sense for them, that saw them be extra successful, and it was a lot of fun to see with the Pistons team this season. Of course, you do have Jalen Duren, Cade Cunningham's running mate. He's going to be an All-NBA player, and boy, is that an expensive extension that he is most likely going to be getting from Detroit. Whether or not it's a good move is a conversation for once the season is over. Right now, the talk should just be about how much he has improved. Came into the league as an 18-year-old center, the youngest player in the league. He's worked on the defense. He's worked on the rebounding. He is just a monster, an absolute perfect pairing with Cade on that pick-and-roll threat. I can't wait for even more of the NBA fan base to get a look at those two in action, especially offensively when the playoffs get rolling. And then Ausar Thompson. Ausar really showed off against Jalen Brunson and the Knicks in the playoffs last year. And we've always seen what he's capable of defensively. But he has improved the offensive game to be a lot more respectable on that dribble drive, enough so that we can leave him out there in certain moments that maybe we previously couldn't have. And I think Bickerstaff does a good job for the most part finding those spots. I think sometimes he likes to go to some of those vets a little bit earlier than I would like. But Bickerstaff trusts those guys. The way he trusts guys is the reason the Pistons are where they are. The fact that when he does play one of those young guys, it gives them trust. He's entrusting them to play that role that he also knows a vet can, just with an added layer. So definitely something to monitor here in the postseason. Duncan Robinson and Kevin Huerter obviously going to play their roles here in the upcoming postseason. For a while there, it looked like Huerter might not matter. Huerter will definitely matter. And what a trade that was at the deadline to move on from the Ivy mess, which don't even need to get touched on. But Kevin Huerter could seriously make an impact for this team, and this team needed shooting. So if he can get hot at the right time, that will be just huge for the Pistons. Of course, Dennis Jenkins coming on strong, earning himself an NBA contract, which was an awesome storyline to see. Just overall a great season from the Pistons. But moving on from more of a recap about the Pistons, now it's time to forecast what the Pistons are looking at. Is a favorable matchup for round one, but that's what the 1 seed gets you. And I think there's been a lot of talk about the potential Charlotte matchup, and I've been victim of that as well. It's an exciting one. You saw the two in a game where the Pistons didn't really need it. Tempers flared. The Pistons gave it a good effort. They trounced the Hornets. It looked really good. And it bodes well for if that matchup does culminate in the first round of the playoffs. But I do think that the Sixers and Magic and the way the play-in operates does deserve some extra thought. Because it's not easy to win back-to-back, and it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy to get the Sixers or Magic after they lose to one or the other. It's just an interesting dynamic, I suppose, because the play-in isn't easy. And at the very least, whoever the Pistons do end up seeing, whether that be Charlotte, Miami, Philly, or Orlando, they will have such an advantage based on the 2 games being played prior, home court advantage. They're going to be ready to go. The Pistons are going to take that series in 4 or 5. The most exciting matchup, I think, would be with Charlotte. The most boring matchup is probably with Miami or Philadelphia. I think Orlando also has a fun element of a rivalry there with Paolo Banchero being picked right after Cade and that little, rivalry of number 1 overall picks. We've seen the two teams get into it before. But I think an exciting matchup would be with Charlotte. I like the Pistons odds in that one. I like the Pistons odds against any of those 4 teams. And I like them to sweep. I love them to win it in no more than 5. So that should be an easy start for the Pistons. And I don't want to get too far into the bracket because of how slow the NBA playoffs tend to move. Due to days off, travel days, it's just the nature of the beast. It's a little bit of a grind, which is okay. But I do want to take a look at that next series. Because I think this is what determines whether or not the Pistons have had a successful season. I'll preface that with the fact that I don't think this Pistons team is good enough to win it all. I think we've seen the offense go into slumps that are not able to be overcome in the postseason in the NBA. And that is due to a lack of a second creator alongside Cade. And if they had that second creator, there's still somewhat of a lack of shooting on the outside. A lot of these guys are developing those shots, and you love to see that. You want to keep this young core together, and you hope they develop that so that you can do so and be successful. But I don't think this team, with where they are currently at, can win the NBA Finals. I think if they won the East, that would be unreal. I think the goal should be to win a second round series. After a season ago dropping a really tough first round series to the Knicks, and then watching the Knicks actually surprise a lot of people and beat the Celtics, it comes down to getting better in those contentious series. The Cavs take on the Raptors in round 1. That's the 4-5 matchup. I think the Cavs get through that easily. They're mostly favored to win that one in 4-5, similar to what the Pistons will be with their first round matchup. The Cavs did lose all 3 to the Raptors in the regular season, but that was before the addition of Harden. None of those were even in the calendar year of 2026. Lonzo Ball was one of their 2 starting guards, and while Lonzo is an absolute legend for many different reasons, he is not the NBA caliber guard that he was once or expected to be. So it ultimately, I think the graded success of this Detroit Pistons season comes down to the second round series against Cleveland. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a really tough matchup against Mitchell, Harden. I guess Wade will play the 3, and then Mobley and Allen in the front court. That's a really good lineup. That's a team that made that move for Harden because they know in a year where the East has been taken over by a young Pistons team that gets by on a lot of effort and grit, you can make a run with that group. And once you get to the finals, it's all about playing a good best of 7. We saw the Pacers do it against the Thunder last year. I like the Pistons to beat the Cavs in a 6 or a 7 game series. I would be confident going into that second round, that Eastern Conference semifinal matchup. I wouldn't be arrogant. I would take the Pistons to win. But it's not going to be easy against that Cavaliers team that caused the Pistons some trouble in the second half after the addition of James Harden. I'm excited for this playoff run. I think it's really going to test Cade and how much he's grown. I think it's really going to test Duren and the supporting cast for Cade and whether or not they can pull something off. It's going to be really exciting to watch this postseason. If I had to give you an official before the playoffs start prediction, I would say the Pistons win their opening round series. Not sure who that matchup's going to be in 4 or 5 games. I would expect it to be Charlotte, just the way the second half of the season has trended. I would say Pistons in 4 over Charlotte. Then I would say after the Cavs beat the Raptors in 4 or 5, I think the Pistons get the best of the Cavs in 7. I think that's a really tough matchup, like I just said. And I do think that spills over into what would be an Eastern Conference Finals matchup with with who I think would be the Boston Celtics. A Celtics team that completely overachieved and outperformed expectations this season. I think they get by a Knicks team that has been a little bit of a roller coaster. This Boston team adding Tatum back, I think a guy who can even take a step back if need be at certain times to let that Celtics team roll the way they have all season long. I think the Celtics would get the Pistons in like a 6-game series, probably finishing it off in Boston while Detroit has that home court advantage. But I think after playing the Cavs for 7 games and the Celtics team with the Missoula coaching, I think they're going to be really tough to beat and get to the finals. So I would expect probably a Thunder Celtics finals. I think it's a real tough one to call between the Thunder and Spurs, but it's similar to how I think the Pistons are going to be slowed down by the Cavs. I think the Spurs will be somewhat slowed down by the Nuggets, and I think that will make it really tough on them in the Western Conference Finals after the Thunder get a relatively favorable matchup against either the Lakers or Rockets. So I got Thunder Celtics. I think I would side with the Thunder in a long series again over the East. I'm not someone to dive super deep into the NBA, especially during the regular season. But I do like the Thunder to win it all. I think the Celtics are the best team in the East. I think the question we're asking here, whether or not the Pistons are the second best team in the East. Because if they're the second best team in the East, that is more than a successful season. And I think it works out really well for the future. So, that's all I got for Pistons talk. We can head on into the other Detroit sports. It'll be a little bit quicker to go over those. The Pistons, of course, going into the playoffs. That is the talk of the town. Now, another talk of the town would be the Detroit Red Wings and their awful, awful collapse this season. On January 1st, they were tied for the top of the Eastern Conference. It looked like a team that truly planned on contending. It looked like Steve Yzerman had finally done it. And I'm not a puck guy. And I don't like the idea of having to part ways with a former legend, with a franchise legend. But it's been 10 years since the Wings have made the playoffs. It's the third straight year of an absolute collapse down the home stretch. The definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We've gotten the same exact result a few years in a row where it looked like that streak was finally going to be snapped, and it wasn't because of the end of the season. The Olympics made me get back into the league. I love Dylan Larkin. I love Sider. I love Raymond. I like seeing Kane and DeBrincat out there doing their thing. I don't know who's the most effective and who's not. I know how good Sider is. I know how good DeBrincat was on the power play. I know Gibson got hot for periods this season. And I know Larkin is an absolute leader. What I don't know is if they can possibly make the changes they're going to need to take the next step. And the people of Detroit aren't even asking for a contender. They're asking for a playoff series. They're asking for 4 games that matter in the month of April. And they just can't get them. And it's just not fair to Hockey Town. They got to figure it out. I don't know exactly if that's parting ways with Yzerman. I don't know if that's parting ways with one of those big dogs that I just mentioned. Maybe to bring in a different core. I don't know if there are young guys coming up in the ranks. I know how good the Griffins have been. But it kind of seems like it's 2 Griffins teams. 2 really good teams that just aren't at the NHL level. It's been a tough watch. Especially as someone who just joined down the stretch after the Olympics. I'm a non-puck guy. And I plan on diving into it deeper when the puck drops to start next season and be carrying the boats for the people saying they're going to make the playoffs. But it certainly sucks right now to be a Red Wings fan. It certainly sucks right now because that was an awful collapse. And you just hope they can make the changes that are going to be tough to make when you don't have a lot of money for an already poor free agent group and you don't have your first round draft pick because you made a move, but not a huge move to try and make it happen going into the second half of the season. It's just a tough look for the Red Wings right now. But on a better note, the Tigers, who was that 4-game series in Minnesota hard to watch. They bounced back big time against a hot Miami Marlins team and a red-hot Sandy Alcantara. First, that 4-game series with the Twins, it's a lot easier to say it here on Sunday night. It certainly wasn't what I was saying Thursday night when I was tweeting and texting about how terrible the Tigers are and how they've let me down. Doing that 13 games into the season, however many games it was. Not a fair thing to do whatsoever. I know that, but that's the nature of being a baseball fan. But they really bounced back over the weekend. The pitching really showed up, and I think that the plus weather in Detroit really made a difference. I think it was hard on them in Minnesota that cold, not just the pitching, but the bats as well. And you can look at some of these expected weighted on-base numbers, and I know that's deeper into the analytics than most people want to get, but those numbers do mean something. Torkelson is hitting just fine. Riley Green is hitting just fine. Dingler, Keith, and McGonigal are obviously hitting just fine. They're hitting above just fine. They're off to an awesome start. It's been so fun to watch. It is interesting to make that take about whether or not it is a new core. I don't think we'll eliminate Riley Green from that core. I don't want to do that. I do think it allows Torkelson to take a back seat, which is a good thing. You can be a part of that core in a more comfortable role if you're Torque. You're not the second best hitter on the team after Riley Green anymore. You're now expected to do a job at times, be a solid first baseman, and that's exactly what Torque is capable of doing. It's exactly what we saw from him last year, and he's doing better so far this year than he did last year. I'm still up on Torque. I'm obviously up on Riley Green, and I'm also incredibly up on Kevin McGonigal. Him and Dylan Dingler led the charge to jump Sandy Alcantara. People were talking about him being back to his 2022 Cy Young form. And Dingler jumped him in the first. Absolutely jumped on him. How impressive to turn on that thing and take it out to left. And then for McGonigal to do more of the same in his second look at that right-handed arm later on. Tigers once again look good. It was a tough 4-game series against the Twins. A tough one to be swept, especially when it's a divisional opponent. But it was on the road. And if the Tigers keep taking care of business at home in those sweet orange unis, in those sweet navy unis, they'll be just fine. They'll be just fine. They got Tarek Skubal doing it. They're going to separate Skubal and Valdez. That way the lefties aren't constantly going all the time. Casey Mize had a shit-eating grin on his face when he was throwing against Miami. He looked good. In that warm weather, he could trust the splitter, and it looked great. So I'm back in on the Tigers. Shocker. We'll see how this week goes. I think you got to take that series against Kansas City. And then you got 4 in Boston where, once again, we're on the road. I think you can be a little more loose with it. But it is a struggling Boston team. So combine the fact that the Tigers are finally getting to see some left-handed arms against the Royals. Games 1 and 3 will be manned by, I believe, Reagans and Bubich. They're finally going to maybe see Vierling get going a little bit, have Torque and Dingler get a little bit more comfortable at the plate. Some real opportunities. Maybe see Glaber's bat speed take an uptick once more. But it'll be a contested series with the Royals, who are a good young team. I think if you can go get 2 out of 3 of those, 2 out of 4 in Boston, you're looking really good in the early parts of the season, about a month in. So, really good start from the Tigers. Like to see that. Really, really a shame what happened to Parker Meadows, who was definitely playing his role, being a late bat, playing a good center field for the Tigers. Hopefully he makes a quick recovery. But that's about it for Tigers talk. And that takes us into the last Detroit team. Next week will be the big preview of the draft. That's when we'll really lock in on it. But as of now, it's really looking like offensive tackle is going to be the move for the Lions. Lots of mock drafts have Cade and Proctor going all the way down to 17 to the Lions, where Brad Holmes would make that move. Maybe some other offensive tackles are around that spot. We'll see. I think offensive tackle is a good spot to attack for the Lions. I also think that Brad Holmes is unpredictable, one of the most unpredictable GMs in the league. Almost predictable how unpredictable he is. You just know he's going to go for something fun. It's the first time the Lions have been in a good draft position in a few years. Pick number 17 definitely opens up some possibilities. Whether it be trading down, like I kind of hoped they would in previous drafts, or even trading up like they successfully have in some of those previous drafts. I think there's a lot of flexibility here in this spot. I think there are a lot of options when it comes to the two fronts for the Lions. I think it comes down ultimately to whether or not you want to beef up the offensive or defensive front. But either way, it's not really a spot where you can go wrong. This isn't where the Lions season is going to be made or broken. That's going to come down to coaching. That's going to come down to utilization of talent and taking advantage of a pretty weak schedule once we get to the fall. But I do like the idea of Proctor. The Lions love to go after good athletes from good programs, and that's worked out well. I mean, just look at Gibbs and Williams from Alabama. So I'm excited for the draft. It'll get me back into the football spirit. But this week is a focus on Detroit basketball. And boy, am I excited for it. Pistons in 5 over the Hornets. Let me see it. Let me see the Tigers stay hot. The Red Wings are in the rearview mirror. We can move on from that. And the Lions. Time to start taking a look at some prospects. So that'll do it for Sunday night, April 12th. Motown Monday, April 13th. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is always a pleasure to talk Motown sports.